Okay. Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. How many of you are this evening experiencing some distress because you're not pleased with yourself? And how many of you are experiencing some distress because other people are not pleased with you? Or to be more focused, how many of you are feeling some distress because you are displeased with yourself or other people are displeased with you? The really simple answer and resolution to the displeasure lies in the words, it's because you don't know who you are. If you knew who you were, you wouldn't indulge the feeling of not being pleased with yourself. Because who you are is too wonderful to be displeased with. I've said before that in the whole time I was growing up, my mother never let me forget who I was. Unfortunately, you did not have mothers or fathers who could constantly remind you of who you are. My mother constantly reminded me of the ultimacy of my being. That God was my Father, and I was divine. That I had a heritage that was immaculate. Yes, I sometimes heard that as a level of responsibility that I therefore had that no one else had. And sometimes I didn't want to have anything to do with it. But the fact is that because I was never allowed to forget who I was, and that my source was divine, not human, I never was able to fully succumb to the mutually agreed upon definitions that all my buddies wanted me to join in, or even any of the adults around me. I am, every time we get together, reminding you of who you really are. You experience distress with yourself because you believe you are who you think you are, who you have been educated to think you are. You are like a child of royalty who was stolen away from his royal parents, you might say, and were brought up with a common man and had no sense of your birthright or your heritage. And then one day you're found by the royal family, and you're brought back home, and you're told that you're not the common lot, that you are royalty. But you have grown up and acquired all of your concepts about yourself from those with whom you were living. And it's not possible for you to just suddenly feel royal. But if you're constantly reminded of it, if you're constantly reminded of your real heritage, it becomes easier and easier for you to abandon or invalidate and abandon the definitions you've made up and made commitment to. I know that I'm being very repetitious, but the repetition needs to be made. The sentence is so simple, and it needs to be remembered. You are neither behind the point of perfection nor advancing toward it. You are at that point and must understand yourself therefrom. You are divine. You are the son, the daughter, the offspring, the child of God, God's self-expression. And you are employing ultimate capacities all the time because they're the only capacities you have available to you. You are using ultimate capacities every day, every moment, even though you're using them to create a sense of limitation, activities of limitation, activities of overcoming limitation. But the ultimate one that you are, the ultimate one that you are attempting to access, to become like, you are right now. Please, as you go through the next week, bring this thought to the foreground of your mind frequently. Even if everything that's going on seems to argue against it and prove to you that it can't be true, be the mother you don't have, reminding yourself of who you are, or the father you don't have to remind you who you are. You be it. Remind yourself of it. The more you remind yourself of it, the more curiosity you are going to have to explore and employ these ultimate capacities more fully. You've got to remind yourself that you have capacities that you're not using fully, so that you might dare to experiment, for lack of better words. Play with looking at everything with a willingness to see the more that's there, the more that I'm telling you is there, than what you're seeing. Let there be moments of willingness to be more intimate with a salt shaker that's on the table in the restaurant you're having lunch in, or the chair you're sitting in. Anything. Let there be moments where you abandon your routine to just be present with something, with an openness and a curiosity to see what you may never have seen before. And then go on about your business. But get into the habit of even momentarily having the curiosity and the willingness to be present with something, to experience the more that's there. This is the way you will break the habit. The persistence of Misperception rather than the persistence of vision. The persistence of the misperception of who and what you are, that you're so willing to believe and then berate yourself for. If you knew you were royalty, you would say, I don't have to put up with this shit. You see? But you just think you're the common man. You just think you're a mortal, working his way through this lifetime. Well, you're not. And you need to be a little bit more active and vehement in your denial of the idea that that is all you are. Be a little bit more aggressive. Be a little bit more self-disciplined to the point where you at least remind yourself frequently during the day. Well, they think I'm awful, and they're distressed with me, but my Father is God. And my inheritance is the fullness of His being. And my capacities are what He has laid down in me. I am more than they think I am. And I don't have to respond like some inconsequential turd. You see? I may be unhappy with myself, but I don't have to be. If you have to pawn it off on me, fine. Say, Raj says I don't have to be. But at least remind yourself that you have an option. There is another way to look at this. If you remind yourself of it, you will remember to try. And trying to be in a new way, bringing the curiosity necessary to having a new experience, is what lays the groundwork for what? A sudden shift of perception. But it's going to take practice. And let the practice be fun. Let it be lighthearted. Paul said, not Paul, Tuttle, Paul, the disciple said, now are we the sons of God. And it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when He, meaning Jesus, when He shall appear, we shall be like Him. Why? Because we shall see Him as He is. Interesting, isn't it? It doesn't say we will recognize Him because of who He is, and He will impress us with who He is, and thereby we will know who He is. It says, and we will then find ourselves to be like Him. It says we will be like Him because we will see Him as He is. We will see Him as He is in reality. Well, in a way, it's sort of like which came first, the chicken or the egg. Are you going to be like me because you see me? Or are you going to see me as like you because you see yourself correctly? It's a moot point. But the key is that now are you, my brothers, now are you the sons and daughters of God, the offspring, the expression of God. And it's time for you to recognize yourself. And in order to recognize yourself, you're going to have to abandon your confidence that you know that you are simply a mortal, a flesh and blood body that has a temporary lifespan, and afterwards the ultimate may be your experience. No. Now the ultimate is going on. So you've got to start today. letting that fact abide in you like a glowing light that gets your attention. And now is the world the kingdom of heaven. And you've got to let that idea pulsate and glow in your mind and get your attention so that you will dare to look at it all. With innocent eyes, fresh eyes, not preoccupied with past definitions. Let's go to the book. The section is entitled The Decision to Forget. Unless you know something, you cannot dissociate it. Dissociate. Separate from yourself, or separate from its source. Unless you know something, you cannot dissociate it. Okay, let's render this more understandable. When you said, but Father, I'd rather see it my way, and got your bill of divorcement, you were dissociating yourself from the Father. That's all. You got a divorce. A separation occurred. That's dissociation. That was the dissociation. Now, mind you, it's well to remember that just saying, Father, I'd rather see it my way, does not constitute a dissociation. To have the thought doesn't mean anything. But to actually say, my definition of this is such and such. At that point, dissociation occurred because you were saying this thing is not what the Father is being right there. It is what I say it is. And at that point, you established a sense of independence. And that's when the dissociation occurred. When you actually made a decision that a thing was what you said it was rather than what the Father was being right there. Now, unless you know something, you cannot dissociate it. Knowledge, therefore, precedes dissociation. And dissociation is nothing more than a decision to forget. Now, here's another practical aspect of this statement. We were talking last week about the fact that what the Father knows is your true knowing, is your capacity to know what a thing is truly. And the Father does not know something for himself alone. His knowing constitutes your true knowing because it was placed in you by virtue of God extending himself right where you are. Now, if dissociation has occurred, in other words, if you are experiencing everything with the meanings you're giving it, rather than what it truly is, it means that you did know originally what it was. Which means that right now, you really do know what everything is. In other words, if you are experiencing dissociation, it means that you did know. And if you did know, you do know. Nothing has been lost. Nothing has to be regained through mental gymnastics or hard work. You're at the point of perfection and must understand yourself therefrom. If knowledge precedes dissociation, then if you're experiencing dissociation, by reversal, you know that you are the ultimate right now. Do you see what I'm trying to say? It's another way of saying, if you are experiencing a misperception of something, there's something real there to be misperceived. The ultimate is going on. It's the only thing confronting you. If you're having a misperception of it, what it really is right there. And so you can say, by reversal, if I am misperceiving this orchid, it means the real orchid is there. Not off in the by and by, after you die, but right here, right now. If you're experiencing a misperception, the thing that you're misperceiving is fully and actively present. The ultimate is here. If you are experiencing life through dissociation, then it means you do know what it really is. And you are just in a momentary state of denial of what it is. So, the kingdom of heaven isn't off in the future, and your capacity to recognize it isn't off in the future. If you're experiencing dissociation and misperception, it is the proof you need that the real thing is present and you know what it is right now. You do know what it is. I must point this out to you so that you don't indulge in the idea that seeing everything for what it is and recognizing and experiencing who you really are is not something that will arrive as a result of great struggle on your part, of standing tall and trying to be more than you are, of being a caterpillar that has to go through a process of metamorphosis in order to become a butterfly, something that the caterpillar wasn't yet. You see what I'm saying? You are the ultimate right now. Again, unless you know something, you cannot dissociate it. Knowledge, therefore, precedes dissociation. Knowing precedes the experience of a belief. And dissociation is nothing more than a decision to forget. Father, I'd rather see it my way. I choose to forget what a thing really is. I choose to forget my source. I choose to define myself and to define everything else. I choose to forget who I am, because if I don't forget who I am, I won't be able to successfully convince myself that my definitions are true and real. So it's a decision to forget. What has been forgotten then appears to be fearful, but only because the dissociation was an attack on truth. I disagree with you, God. This is an orchid, and it grows from a seed, not from the impulse of creation that you are. It grows from a seed. And you know what? I'm going to determine that if it doesn't get watered, it will wither and die and be no more, you see. I don't care if you say it's eternal, God. I say that it's mortal. I say that without proper treatment, it will die, and that plant will forevermore not be. You see? It's a disagreement with God. It's a standing at odds with God. It's an attack on God. You are fearful because you have forgotten. And you have replaced your knowledge, your knowing, by an awareness of dreams, fantasies, imaginations. Because you are afraid of your dissociation, not of what you have dissociated. Let's be clear on this. You have replaced your knowledge, true knowing, by an awareness of dreams, things you made up. Because you are afraid of your dissociation, not of what you have dissociated. You are afraid of your act of divorcement and what it says about you. You are afraid of your act, your misbehavior, your disobedience. You are afraid of your dissociation, not of what you have dissociated. Even in this world's therapy, when dissociated material is accepted, it ceases to be fearful, for the laws of mind always hold. Even in the dream, the laws of mind hold. The question has been asked at times, why are we afraid to wake up? You are afraid to wake up because in your imagined independent state, you've lost your sense of balance, you've lost your perspective, you've lost the sense of your source, you no longer recognize your royalty. And at the bottom line, you know that this lack of remembering of what you are was an attempt to be at odds with your Father, your source, and therefore was a denial of your reality and the truth of what you are, and you feel vulnerable, and the assumption is that you are guilty, and that once you dare to say, God, help, God, I want to let you back into my life, you will be punished. But the fact is that when you let God back in, you let in the truth of you. You let in the stability of your being. You let in the experience of the eternality of your being. And you let in the recognition that your imaginations accomplished nothing, and therefore nothing disobedient was accomplished, and your eternal invulnerability is experienced. You find your safety rather than judgment and punishment.